What's going on YouTube? Today I'm bringing you a complete guide to the biggest, baddest boss in Modern Warfare 3 Zombies, the Red Worm. The Red Worm was added as part of Season 1 and is the only way to get 3 of these 6 schematics added with Season 1. I'm not gonna lie to you, this fight is no joke, but don't worry, I've got you covered. I'm gonna teach you how to start the fight, I'm gonna give you tips on what to take to the fight, and lastly, I'm going to give you some strategy for during the fight. If you're looking for the best content to get the most out of Modern Warfare 3 Zombies, then you are in the right place. Make sure you leave a like and sub down below, and let's get right into it. There are 2 main approaches for this fight. This fight scales in difficulty with how many people are there. So you could go with a smaller, stronger team, or you go with a bigger team. I've done this fight 5 times. 3 of those we had 6 people, and 2 of those we had 10 to 12 people. And this video is one of those larger teams with 10 to 12 people. And my win-loss record, I've only killed it 1 time as a 6-man, and then both 10 to 12 people teams, we killed it both times. So really it's up to you. Personally, I like the larger team strategy. Before I explain how to find the 4 items you need to be able to start the fight, let's talk about before the match even starts. So the way the fight happens, it actually happens in the storm after the 45-minute timer, but you don't know exactly how long it's going to take you to find the 4 USBs you need to start the fight. Plus, you don't want to balance that with having to grind contracts to get money to try and upgrade your weapons. Therefore, what I recommend is probably taking in 2 ether tools and at least 1 crystal if you can, if not 2. What I went with 2 pack-a-punch, 3 guns, and had legendary tools on both of those. Just save you some time so you have to worry about that time crunch and you have more time to, basically get ready or assure you find all 4 pieces to be able to start the fight. Alternatively, what you could do is have someone grinding contracts while the other 2 work on the USBs. So I mentioned we had almost 12 people there for the fight, and part of the reason was, and I highly suggest you do it to make the fight even easier and it still balances the rewards, is that as soon as we got into that game, I started typing in text chat trying to recruit people to come do the fight. That way people have more time to prepare, and it's more likely to actually get people to show up for the fight. Because just as a 3 or a 6-man, it's much more difficult as opposed to a 9 or a 12-man like we had. Definitely a tip I highly recommend. The first step in starting the fight is to go all the way to the northeast corner of Urzikstan to this building in Orlov military base. The easiest way to spot this building is when you look at the map, it's the shape of an L. Once inside the building, go to the 2nd floor and you're looking for a desk with a map of Urzikstan with 2 photos on each side. These photos show the general location you'll need to go to get a gold USB, of which you need all 4 to start the fight and bring out the worm. Because the photos don't tell you where on the map it is, I looked for some kind of big landmark that could match up to the map and give me an idea of where to go. For example, for the first USB, I noticed this very specific section of road, and I was actually able to match it up directly to Orlov military base and start exploring around in there. What you're looking for looks exactly like the mobile UAV towers from Warzone 2. It's basically a laptop on a stand with a post with a spinning satellite dish on top. What you'll do is you'll go up and interact with it, it'll finish its animation and spit out the USB and store that in your inventory. The second USB I thought was in this section of the tier 3 red zone because I matched up the buildings on the map to the photo, but I actually missed a couple very critical details that actually put me in the wrong zone. If you notice on the photo, there's actually quite a few buildings around the upper edge of that section, and in this courtyard, there's none of those buildings at all. When I moved over this courtyard on the opposite side of the red zone, I instantly spotted that spinning satellite and went up and got USB number 2. For USB 3, I had to go towards Zerevan suburbs, and again, looking for a big landmark. The photo is really simple. I saw this big building on it, so whenever I actually did find it on the map, I easily spotted this big city hall looking building. My first plan was to get that high ground and try and look around to spot the little device I get the USB from, and while I was actually trying to find a way onto the roof, I actually found the device and got USB number 3. USB 4 was probably the easiest to match the photo to the map just because it was these very distinct and obvious apartment buildings on the west side of the level 2 orange zone right on the edge of the Seaport district, so headed over there and luckily found it right in the middle of the 4 buildings in the courtyard. Now that you have all 4 USBs, you're probably asking where's the fight actually going to happen. What you're looking for is 2 ammo caches very close together, somewhat close to the storm. For us, it was on the east side of the map, and as soon as we saw it, we knew it was exactly what we were looking for. Plus, there's several big advantages of having those ammo caches right there, which I'll cover in part 2 of this video. For part 2, I'm going to talk about what I took to the fight and what I think are absolute musts to have success in fighting the Red Worm. The fight actually happens inside the storm, so the biggest thing you need is a durable gas mask. My first secret weapon for this fight are sentry guns. Each member of my team made sure we held as many sentry guns in our inventory as we could, while still saving a few slots for the other things I mentioned here later in the video. I've gone to this fight with as few as 4 sentry guns and as many as 7, and actually the most recent time we killed it, we had a guy get a car and actually put his sentry guns down and go back to a buy station to buy more. Sentry guns not only help put constant damage on the worm, but also help contain some of the other zombies which will be in the area. The next thing me and my teammates all took were self-revives. So we each had 2. We had 1 equipped and 1 in our inventory. Similar to self-revives, for your field upgrade, make sure everybody puts on healing aura. If somebody gets knocked, you can actually use that to get them right back up, and they don't have to use their self-revive, which actually preserves it in case they really need it later on. Before I cover what weapons I took, you'll notice 2 other major things in my inventory. Number 1 is the dog bone. Plan on calling that in as soon as we got to the fight, so once again, if somebody goes down, the dog can actually revive them, plus it helps keep some of the other zombies off you whenever you're trying to fight the worm. The other thing I brought in my loadout that I hadn't mentioned yet was I brought the experimental gas grenades, or the gas grenades as my tactical. Because I was already hitting ammo boxes to refill ammo and then I'll refill my tacticals, I was able to throw these at the worm and just do extra damage during the fight. Now let's talk about what weapons I took. So initially, I plan on taking the crossbow with the thermite bolts and then also a ray gun. Whenever I equipped the crossbow, I equipped the base version and didn't have any attachments, so that thing was basically useless in its current form, so I dropped it, went to a mystery box to get something else. And then when I was running around the red zone with the ray gun, I had the ray gun at pack 3, and I still couldn't even one-shot the enemies in red, so I kind of realized this wasn't really what I was looking for, so I ended up dropping in as well. I spent probably 10 minutes at a mystery box, well actually 2 different mystery boxes because it moved halfway through, just trying to get something useful I could use. What I ended up with was a DG58 LSW. It's an LMG, and it's one of my absolute favorite guns for zombies. If you haven't tried it, I highly recommend it. And then secondly, a Scorcher. The Scorcher wasn't really that helpful in the actual fight, but it did help me getting around the map early when I was actually trying to find things and just move around more quickly. Now that I had my weapons and my inventory set, I made sure both weapons were Pack-a-Punch 3. We had about 5 minutes before Storm started moving, so we started to regroup and move to the fight location. I even found time to be somebody's res hero along the way. Now tell me, if nothing else, does that deserve a like? See you later. Come fight the worm. High five. When you get to the fight location, you'll see 4 little towers or pods called refractors. They look just like the ether extractors from that contract, and they're labeled Alpha, Bravo, Charlie, and Delta. What you're going to do with these when the storm reaches you and they actually enter the storm or the gas is 1 USB goes in each of the towers, and that's what starts the fight. Once you put all 4 USBs in, you have between 2 and 2.5 minutes before the worm actually comes out and the fight actually begins, but you will have some smaller zombies come out in the meantime. Now that the fight's about ready to begin, there's a couple of things you can clearly see from this footage. Number 1, there's a ton of people here to fight it. The way it works is as long as you do damage on the worm, you will get credit and you will get the reward rift, so that's huge. You don't even have to be a 6-man, or you don't even have to add extra people to your team. We didn't. We thought it was harder, to try and keep track of where our teammates were, so we just stayed as a 3-man. The second thing is, I mentioned I brought in 4 sentry guns for this fight, and you'll notice how many people put their sentry guns down way too early. Sentry guns only have a certain amount of life that they're down and actually usable, so what I did is I actually waited for the worm to come out before I started putting my sentry guns down, just to maximize how much use I got out of them. During the fight, the worm has 3 major attacks, and the first one are purple orbs that fly around in the sky. If you've done Act 4 and completed that fight, these are basically the same, except they hit way harder. As soon as you or your teammates see them come out, make sure you call them out and take them down immediately, because they can do a lot of damage and make things go from bad to worse very quickly. The second attack, again, is similar to Act 4 in that the worm will actually try and eat you, and when it does, expect to take damage, and then also spam your parachute button because the worm spits you out high enough that you will fall and knock yourself. The third attack is a white laser beam that reminds me of the abominations in the red zone, but it hits a lot harder. If you actually keep some pretty good distance, like 30-40 meters from the worm, you usually don't even have to worry about this one. The other thing I'll mention with the worm is it has a ton of health. For us, the fight took about 8 minutes, and that was with about 12 people, so expect this to be a long fight. Now that we've covered how the worm fights, let's actually talk about other things that you have to worry about. So the first one obviously being that you're in the storm, and I said buy a durable gas mask earlier. One thing you probably didn't know, and I mentioned why those ammo caches are so important. So if you actually hit the ammo caches when your gas mask is low, it actually refills your gas mask, something I never knew until this fight. So that is huge, something to keep in mind and make sure your teammates know as well. The second thing you need to worry about during this fight is other zombies do come out of the ground or come out from the area and will try and attack you. Because we had so many people there for our fight, we actually had a ton of extra zombies. We had several abominations, several mimics, several disciples, and several manglers all at once, in addition to probably 50 normal zombies all running around. It was just pure chaos, but it was so much fun. Once the worm dies, it will produce a reward rift in the middle of the fighting area, and it also produces a rift for an instant successful exfil. Thank you so much for watching. Make sure you leave a like down below, and if you want to see how we got the other 3 schematics in Season 1 in one trip to the Ether Rift, then check out this video I have linked here.